everyone, Robbie here, and this is episode 100 of the Coach's Journey podcast. Who would have thought it? And here we are. And when I was thinking about how we might celebrate 100 episodes, what would be a good 100th episode, I decided this would be the perfect thing. And what you're going to get in this episode is really where the Coach's Journey all started, which is that one afternoon in the South Bank Centre, a client of mine cancelled at really late notice. And so I had made a rule for myself that what I would do to kind of counteract the crushing sadness that I felt, which obviously is not all about somebody cancelling on me. But I was rewiring that. I would do something cool. And so one day, when a client, and I remember this client really clearly, we did great work. I'm really proud of that work. And she did cancel on me a couple of times at late notice. I sat overlooking the Houses of Parliament and the London Eye, and I typed most of an article. And I'd had this idea for a while. I was like, I should write an article about how I've grown my coaching business. I don't really remember where that idea came from, but that article came. And what happened with it was, I wrote most of it in one sitting, I rewrote it, I edited it quite a bit, and then I posted it. And a crazy thing for me happened. I think it's still the most read piece of writing that I've done, apart from possibly, one of the 12-minute method books. Certainly of all my blogs, it's the most read one. It went mini viral, got shared a whole bunch of times, hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, and it changed things a lot for me, really, at that point. Certainly, it was the spawning of the Coach's Journey. And I've been thinking about sharing this as an episode for a while, but it just feels perfect for episode 100. What you're going to get is me reading out that article, kind of 12-minute method style. I did it not quite in one take, but pretty much one take. And it's beautiful. There's a guy called Simon Batchelor, and he was the first person that I heard say, you should really reuse your content in all different formats. Not only because it gives you more content, but mostly because different people like to absorb content in different ways. And as I was listening back just now to my recording of this, which I did a little while ago, I realized it feels different to the Red article. You can feel me in it. And of course, it's not me of 2018 when I wrote this, or 2017 even, when I wrote this. It's me of 2023, I think. So it's actually quite a while since I recorded this originally. It's me much closer to now, but it's more alive than in writing. So you get that. And if you've read this article before, then I'd invite you to listen today. Anyway, listen with what I often invite people to do at the start of training programs, inspired by Isabel Mortimer, a coach I mentioned in this episode, which is, you might have heard things before. And whenever that happens, you get a little choice. Do you switch off? Or do you listen with new ears, listening for what you can learn, what's new? And what I love about listening back to me reading this article is that how I do things now is different in some ways, but in the most fundamental ways, this is how I built my business, and it has continued to grow. It's not enormous in the scheme of some people who boast online / have huge businesses, but it's continued to grow to more and more turnover and more income, profit that is, and that that's important to say. And of course, some of you will know that I've boiled down some of the things that were in this article originally into a model. You'll hear that. If you love this, the chances are you'll love the ebook that we have on the-coaching-business-flywheel, an introduction to the coaching-business-flywheel. You might love the digital product that you can buy from us, which is, you'll hear me talk about some invitations that I sent out in this as I was building my business. You can get the most, some up-to-date versions of those that I still send out now, very similar to what I used to send out when I was first starting the business, and loads more templates from how I run my business, flowchart, coaching agreements, and more in the Coaching Business Flywheel Booster Pack. So if you want more from me, those are great places to get it. Other places I'd recommend to go, if you want to dive into more up-to-date thinking from me on these kinds of topics, the series that Ruth Saville and I recorded last year on the Coaching Business Flywheel, if you just search Coaching Business Fundamentals in the in our feed, you'll find episodes there from autumn 2024. And of course, you could join the Coach's Journey community, which is where I provide coaching these days to other coaches who want to create thriving businesses and thrive while they do it. And in the Coach's Journey, we we really believe that everyone who has the potential to be an amazing coach gets to do amazing coaching, and that no one should quit the business of coaching because it feels too hard. And that's what this article, this episode, is really about. Both of those things. That's what was at the core of me writing it. I think it's what the creative impulse to write it was probably about. What happened after the article was it went mini viral, and because of what you'll hear is in this episode, loads of people reached out to me to have conversations, and I realized I love those conversations with coaches where I provided advice and I provided insight and I coached. And it was just so wonderful that I knew I wanted at least a part of my business to be about supporting coaching. And more than that, I really regretted not recording a load of conversations I had with successful coaches when I was starting out. And that, of course, is what the Coach's Journey podcast is. So it really all came from this article in loads of ways, apart from the name that came later. And I say midway through the recording that we'll put links to everything in the show notes. I'm not actually going to do that. What you'll find in the show notes is links to all the people who I mentioned in the episode who have been on the Coach's Journey podcast. So you can find them, at least find their first appearances on the show. There's been more than one for Phil Bolton and Katie Harvey. And we'll also put a link to the original article, which is on thecoachesjourney.com, where there's loads more links in there. So if you want to find more detailed links to some of the organizations I mentioned or how they're spelled, you can find that. It's the transcript of the episode. So do check that out. Of course, some of the stuff that I mentioned is out of date, and that's the beauty of things changing. But I left it in because even though Coaches Rising don't run a summit usually in the way that they used to, they're still a great organization. The only one I do want to point to is the coaching school is resting. When I wrote this article, I really wanted people to go there because I'd had such an amazing time training there. But I did release an episode at the start of this year about how to choose a coaching training program. So if you love the sound of the coaching school and want to hear what I would recommend that you do to choose a coaching training program, we'll put a link to that episode in the show notes as well, or you can find it in your field. So look, I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you take away loads of actions and inspiration for your coaching business. Listen all the way to the end if you want to know about more ways to support the Coach's Journey. Please click subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. And most of all, thank you for listening. Thanks for being here at episode 100, and for those of you who have been here since episode 1. Thanks to everybody who has sent in a comment, sent in an email, sent in a beautiful LinkedIn message at different times. I really appreciate it. When we make these things, we do it with a combination often of bloody-mindedness and courage. We don't know how they'll land. Don't necessarily expect to be here getting on 5 years later and 100 episodes. Mostly, it's the people who give the feedback that help it keep going. Of course, there's lots of other people too, including the Coach's Journey host team, who have become part of this adventure with me. Alex, Amy, that is, Ro, Steve Creek, who have worked behind the scenes. Thanks for all your help. And yeah, look, I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you stay with us for another 100 episodes. And yeah, listen all the way to the end of the show if you want to hear about more ways to support the Coach's Journey. Thanks so much. Here we are. Enjoy episode 100. I did my first paid coaching session in July 2015, having started my coach training a month earlier. By April 2017, less than 2 years later, I was a full-time coach. I handed in my notice to my office job almost a year to the day after I finished that training, the amazing Coaching School Foundation course. And this year, as I wrote the article, I expected to make more money doing this new career than I have in any of my previous ones. Now, I'm not a man who does very well at celebrating his success, although I'm getting better. But even my success gremlins can't deny that this is an awesome achievement, something that I am really proud of. And with a grin on my face, I can't help but think it's too good an opportunity to write a clickbaity titled article for me not to. I might never have the chance again, so here it is. Of course, I am standing on the shoulders of many giants to do this, in particular Phil Bolton of the Coaching School, and Rich Litvin and Steve Chandler via The Prosperous Coach, but including many more friends, colleagues, loved ones and coaches, and of course it hasn't been easy, but it has happened. And I hope that there will be something in here that will help you make your mark on the world, whether you are a coach or not. Let me know. I am a full-time coach less than 2 years after starting my training. Here are the 7 ways I made that happen. 1. Get really good. Firstly, it was important to me from the start to get really good at what I do. That's why I found coaching. I was looking for the work where my natural talents and the things that I enjoy came together to enable me to do truly great work. So the quality of that work was always important to me. But it became more important as I gradually realized how to make this coaching thing work as a business. You probably can do it by tricks and strategies and Google AdWords, but it's a hell of a lot easier if you're just really good at what you do. If you transform people's lives, they will tell people about your work. So I chose my training well. I can't tell you that much about other trainings, but I can tell you that the coaching school is amazing. I saw it firsthand as a student, and I've recently seen it as an observer on their latest cohort as the first step towards joining their faculty. I wanted training where I could get exposure to great trainers, learn great content, and be supported to grow into myself and be the best coach I could be. And the coaching school did that and more. The small group learning and focus on people finding their own authentic style was fantastic. And the support outside the modules, coaching, supervision, and a wonderful growing community has made so much difference. They also provide more support than any other foundation training I'm aware of on how to build your practice. But the most important thing here is that the depth and quality of the training meant that when I started coaching people, I was already doing great work. With the coaching school's support, I got better and better. As I say, I don't know all there is to know about other trainings, but I do know that the more I speak to people about their coaching training, the more glad I am that I chose such a comprehensive, deep, and brilliant course. And once I'd finished the course, I kept learning. Learning can be expensive, but what you are selling is you, and the more learning you have, the more you can offer your clients. And you can find affordable ways to learn too. I joined free online courses, listened to podcasts, watched videos and read books. I also paid for training with Evolute 6 and twice with Coaches Rising, whose annual summit I highly recommend. I also kept coaching. I found ways to do this, to keep my hand in, to keep my skills fresh. Some of them are below, but it's so important to remember that one of the fundamental ways to get better at coaching is to do more coaching. And one of the few ways that you can get worse at coaching is to do no coaching. So, as below, don't let anything stop you. Supervision has been important too, to focus and continue my learning and give me the support I need. In a group, this only costs us about £20 a session each, with a great supervisor, Katie Harvey. And last, but so important that it warrants its own heading, number 2, get a coach. In fact, I didn't just get one coach. I took advantage of all the opportunities to get coaching I could find. I said yes when free coaching was offered by different people whose mailing lists I was on. I got coaching as part of my training at the coaching school, and plenty of my fellow students practiced on me as part of that course. I did some swaps with other coaches I knew, but none of that made as much of a difference as the engagements I have done with 2 professional coaches, Mike Toller and Joel Monk. 2 coaching sessions with a coach are so much more than twice as useful as 1 session, and 4 sessions or 6 months of coaching can have real power and massive impact. The free coaching and co-coaching will help, but committing to a long-term coaching engagement is what will make the difference. The power is so much greater over time. When you're investing in yourself financially, when you are committing to change yourself over a period of months, the more you pay, the better the coach is, and the more you will wring every last bit of value from it. I used it to improve my coaching, both by including that in my objectives and learning by observing the coaches I work with. I used it to stretch myself, to become the person I wanted to be, to release myself from the chains and habits that were holding me back. I used it to break my money issues open, allowing me to sell more coaching for more money, and I used it to drive my business development way beyond where it could have gone without that. And look, if you're worried about paying for coaching, then set one of your objectives with your coach as being increasing your income by more than the fee she or he charges. If that doesn't happen, get a new coach. But if you choose wisely, it will. There's almost nothing in my life that I've paid for that has had more benefits for me personally and professionally than my coaching, and certainly nothing in my work life. For my work, it is absolutely vital, because having a coach will affect your business in so many ways. It will remind you of the magic of coaching, giving you personal stories to tell to potential clients or at parties, or when your suspicious school friend asks you what the hell coaching really is. It'll give you confidence in your work and confidence that coaching is as magical as you think it is. It'll show you that people can charge a lot more than you do, and it's absolutely bloody worth every penny. In fact, it's a bargain. And it'll give you credibility with clients. To borrow from the prosperous coach, imagine if a doctor didn't trust her own medicine to save herself. Would you trust the medicine? Would you take it? Maybe if you were desperate. But if she tells you how it's saved her, and how it saved her brother and her friends, how she values every time she takes it, then you'd take it too, and happily. Number 3, invitation and referral. First things first, this comes with a big hat tip to the prosperous coach, which I thoroughly recommend. But even before I read that book, I'd seen the evidence that this is the truth from every full-time coach I had spoken to. A coaching business isn't built through marketing. It isn't built through tricks. It's built through doing great work and astounding people so that they tell their friends, colleagues, family members, and pets about you. That's when your business grows. Then, in the end, you have a critical mass of clients referring people to you, and your business drives itself. One of my main aims was to build towards that number as quickly as I could. Here's what I did. 1. I invited 2 groups of people to do coaching with me. First were people I know. These were people who had networks away from my own, networks that might be interested in coaching. I was really clear about this. I would say this isn't because you might become a client. It's because you might know people who would, and the best way for you to be able to speak to them about coaching is to have experienced it. The second group were people I'd love to work with. I just thought about the people I knew, the people I'd met, and thought, who would I absolutely love to spend some time coaching? Some of these were people who fitted the kind of coaching I thought I wanted to do, and some were just awesome people I knew. Some were awesome people I didn't know. And now that, inviting them, was quite stressful. Again, I made it absolutely clear that there was no pressure to become a client, but of course, if they wanted to, then we could talk about that. If they did, then great, there's a prospective client. If not, then I had more experience of working with the people who I really want to do more work with, and someone extra had done some work with me, and I'd helped to change the world and make someone awesome's life that little bit better. 3, I invited anyone who was interested in coaching with me to start with a free, no-strings coaching session. This meant instead of starting with a sales conversation I wasn't convinced I was very good at, I started with coaching, which I was good at and getting better. And it meant that I got to coach everyone who contacted me. Again, the pool of people I'd worked with got bigger, the diversity of people I'd worked with increased, and I got better at coaching. 4, I systemized asking for referrals. After each of the above types of coaching session, whether they paid me or not, and whenever I worked with a client, I asked for referrals. I was explicit. These are the people I'd like to work with. These are the people I do my best work with. Who do you know? Of course, this didn't always work. Not everyone gave me referrals. Not everyone I invited for a coaching session took me up on the offer. And if you're going to offer this to your friends, you have to be prepared for a bunch of them to never reply to your email, which feels slightly odd. But there's learning in that too. And overall, I worked with more people, got more coaching hours, and got more people talking about my work. And that's how I got here. People will tell you that giving coaching away devalues your work, but I disagree. With boundaries, it is incredibly useful. How can people who have never received coaching know about the value of it, know about the magic? How can they understand what it's like to walk away from a session with things which have felt impossible for months or years, now clearly laid out in their mind, with a greater understanding about themselves and more confidence in what they are doing than ever before? How can you expect them to pay money, and particularly serious money, if they haven't done that? But when they have? The key then is boundaries. I'm happy to do one free session with anyone once, as long as they fit into a group of people I've already selected. In this case, potential clients, friends with interesting networks, or who I want to understand my work, and people I'd love to work with. I'm not happy to work with someone for 6 months for free. In offering these free sessions, I am more experienced and more skilled, and the number of people I've coached is much higher, and the world has changed too. One person at a time. Number 4, at all costs, keep coaching. Stay coaching. At all costs, don't stop. Don't lose momentum. When I was starting out, this meant try to do some coaching on every one of my coaching days when I was part-time, and at the very least coach one person every week. One of my hardest moments came when I hadn't coached anyone for about 6 weeks. I'd just negotiated with my employer to go down to 3 days a week, giving me 2 days a week for coaching. I'd had about 2 weeks of this. My clients had all come to an end, and the fear was setting in. And then I did a coaching session with my sister. And the relief I felt was palpable. It opened so much up, answering so many of my gremlins, why I'm doing this, that I'm good at it, that it helps people. You can't control who says yes to working with you, but you can control whether you do any coaching at all. So find the way to keep coaching. Do half an hour each way of coaching with someone you train with. Offer to coach your sister or your dad for 20 minutes on the phone. Find a local co-coaching group. Find a charity who would appreciate your services for free. Do something, anything, to keep coaching. And don't let any little thing stop you. I've written elsewhere about how dancing with resistance was the most important lesson I learned in my first year as a coach. And that is fundamentally true. If you're getting pulled in all directions by resistance, with its doubts, fears, and procrastinations, then you're in trouble. In that article, I talked about some of the ways this gets in the way for people and some of the ways to dance with it. Here, in particular, I'm talking about marketing. Marketing, building a website, having a mailing list, creating videos, blogging can so often be resistance. It's insidious resistance because it sounds like that stuff will help you run a coaching business. And here's the thing, it will, but only a tiny bit. And that tiny bit isn't worth it when it stops you from doing the work you're here to do. That work is coaching. Don't stop coaching until your website is ready. Don't stop coaching until you have written your About You page. Don't stop coaching until you've found the right way to post about coaching on LinkedIn or Facebook. That's all resistance. If you click through some of the links in this article, they'll be in the show notes for the podcast episode. To really successful coaches who have helped me, half of them don't even have websites, or their websites are pretty rubbish. If you build your business by coaching often and coaching well, then that can't be resistance. It can only be you changing for the better. The world, one person at a time. Number 5, everything starts with a conversation. If you got far enough to want to be a coach, even more to train to be a coach, you already know you're good with people. You know you can have great conversations, and the better you get at coaching, the better your conversations will become. And here's the key thing, learn from friends, colleagues, and books I've read. Pretty much everything starts with a conversation. As a coach, unless you've written a best-selling book or been coaching for years, almost no one is going to contact you out of the blue or find you on Google. You need to have conversations. It will help you get better at talking about your work, and more importantly than that, in every conversation there is possibility. I once had a conversation at an event with a woman who, it turned out, had once sold a sofa to Phil from the coaching school. She introduced me to her boss at the event, who invited me for a coffee when he found out I was a coach, and then his company offered me £2,500 of work in the next 8 months, because she once sold Phil a sofa. You never know when someone will recommend you for a job or to a friend as a coach. But you do know that if you have no conversations, and particularly no conversations about coaching, then no one will. Have coffees and beers with former colleagues to catch up. Meet other coaches you know and speak to them. You never know when they'll need to refer a client to someone, and maybe they'll think of you. Be generous, though. Don't be needy. Start from a sense of possibility, that something wonderful will come from this conversation if you let it emerge, and that it doesn't matter what. Let's get clear. This is networking. This is growing your network, and many people have a serious allergy to networking. But you are a coach. You are great with people, and you can use that skill to grow your network in a way that suits you through one-on-one conversations. One suggestion is this. Contact someone with, here's where I'm at with my work. I'd love to meet for a coffee to pick your brains, discuss your work, understand more about you, whatever. At the conversation, once you've had the opportunity to explain more about your work, where you are, and while you're doing it, the question you want to ask is, who do you know? Who do you know who I should speak to? Who do you know that is doing what I'm doing? Who do you know who sounds like these people who I love working with and changing the lives of? People are generous, just like you. They love to help. By the end of the conversation, usually they've already mentioned 2 or 3 names of people, but if not, ask. And then ask them for an introduction and have another conversation. And don't be shy about adding people on LinkedIn, giving them a card, emailing them if you give them one. Yeah, emailing them if they give you one of their cards, that is. At first, my fear demon said, what if they think it's ridiculous that I'm getting in touch with them, adding them, emailing them? But then I realized, what's the worst that can happen? They think I'm ridiculous, delete it, and don't think about me anymore. That's the worst. And in 99% of situations, what I get is an increased network, which takes me one step closer to the critical mass of clients to drive my business by referrals. On which note, number 6, look for shortcuts to the client critical mass. Quite soon after I became a part-time coach, coaching 2 days a week plus evenings, I began to get in touch with coaches I knew or was introduced to ask them to sit down for a coffee. Everything starts with a conversation. And these conversations were great. They were very affirming and very educational. There are many things I learned from them, but there were 2 significant areas these coaches had in common. The first was that their business, as described above, was kept going by referrals. There comes a point where when you have worked with enough people, even if they only refer you 1 client every 2 years each, that's enough to make your practice grow. The client critical mass. The second thing is that, to get to that point, each of these people who had become a full-time coach had had something that tipped the balance for them and took them to that critical mass, something which referred them clients. Phil Bolton, who founded the coaching school, worked with Escape the City and a couple of other similar organizations, plus spent a couple of years coaching in-house, honing his craft. Katrina Horry's work, running coach training for emerging leaders, made a big difference. Isabel Mortimer had a great link with an incredibly successful coach in her early days, someone who sent her clients her way with a show of faith in how brilliant she was and is. It's possible to build just by invitation and referral. But seeing this pattern got me thinking, how can I shortcut to that point? A dozen extra clients over a year from one source would not only make a lot of difference to my income now, but also to the pool of people I'd worked with. So I started looking for these opportunities. I contacted several small organizations I knew, some out of the blue, and some by being linked to them, and I kept my eyes peeled. When a fellow coaching school graduate, James Bianco, mentioned the possibility of working with career shifters, an organization I really admire, I got in touch right away. When I had a conversation with Mike from the coaching school after completing their course, I asked to be more involved. When my then supervisor, Vegard Olsen, mentioned opportunity to work with his organization, Coaching Partner, I said yes. When I saw that Isabel, mentioned above, was involved with Gradin, a company who do awesome work training teachers in coaching skills, I asked for an introduction. And there were others too. Now the truth is, none of the above examples led me to the one shortcut I was after, but they did two things. First, some of them led to some work. A couple of clients here, a couple there. And that, of course, built my client base and improved my coaching. Second, I became more practiced at having conversations with the kind of people who might give me the opportunity that would make all the difference. All this meant that when the two opportunities came along, which have in the end been a big part of me moving to full-time coaching, I noticed them. And I was practiced at having these conversations. And after all the coaching I had done, all the learning I had done, all the resistance I had battled through, I knew that I could do great work for them. And now I am. 7. Create the space for your work to grow. I coached while working full-time during my training and for roughly the first 6 months of my coaching business. During some co-coaching with a brilliant woman called Holly Aston, I realized that I needed to create more space for it. So I found a way to work part-time, giving myself 2 days a week, plus evenings and weekends to work on coaching. Without this space and time, I couldn't have done all the things above, and I couldn't have got where I am this quickly. I'm a big fan of day jobs, for coaches, for artists, for career changers, for anyone who needs to experiment. As Liz Gilbert says in her book, Big Magic, it's not fair to put the pressure of all your earning on your art, on your calling. Now, ideally, this other work is something you enjoy, and I was very lucky to be working with a wonderful team doing great work at the Claw Leadership Program. But even if it isn't, don't beat yourself up if you're not full-time straight away, and if you have to do some other work some of the time. That's natural, and it's important. For most of us, we put enough pressure on ourselves when we're selling our own time as a coach, with all the doubts that come with that, without adding in a massive pressure to sell in order to pay your rent. Especially when you're just starting out. But if you're working full-time, there just isn't the space to do the work you need to do to grow your business. And here's another thing. As soon as you are a part-time coach, your credibility with others and your confidence in yourself will rise too. And if you aren't full-time and you aren't trying to find the way to increase the time you have for coaching, then either you're not that serious about coaching or you're so wrapped up in resistance, gremlins, and other fear demons that you can't find your way through. If it's the former and you actually don't want to grow your coaching business, then that is absolutely fine. And what you're doing is wonderful. Keep changing people in whatever way you are. And perhaps at some point, you'll come back to this article or read something else and you'll think, now's the time. If it's the latter, if you want nothing more than to work as a coach, use those skills that you were put on this planet to use and change lives every day, then my advice is to get some help. It's very hard to beat the resistance and the gremlins, and it's almost impossible on your own. I was never sure I would want to be full-time. I just knew coaching was something I needed more time for. And then, after a year of being part-time, I realized when answering a question from my coach that I wanted to take it to the next level. The tipping point, the point when I realized I could do that, came from two things. It was when, having busted my money issues and raised my prices, I realized I was making more money from my 2 days of coaching than from my 3 days in the office. And it was when those two bigger projects appeared on the horizon that would take me toward the client critical mass and give me more regular income. I knew the only way to have the space to take them would be to stop all the other coaching work, or to leave my other job. And then, despite the fear, demons, and gremlins being very much present, it was time. So, there you have it. There are the 7 ways I became a full-time coach in less than 2 years after starting my training. I hope it inspires you. I hope you feel a sense of optimism and energy having read it. This is possible. And not just for coaches. It is possible for so many freelancers and entrepreneurs and creators. I am, all of a sudden, and of course, after a lifetime of graft and searching, a case study in changing careers. But for coaches in particular, I hope you use even one of these ways and ideas to grow your coaching practice. Everything starts with a step. It starts with you saying, I want to do this. It starts from doing great work that uses your unique blend of skills to their maximum. And then you're changing the world, one person at a time. Coaching is growing, and the world needs people like you. Hi everybody, Robbie here again. One last time for this episode. Just a few quick things to share with you before you go on to the rest of your day. If you like to what I had to say in this episode about how I group my coaching business, coaching in general, chances are you'll love the free ebook, An Introduction to the Coaching Business Flywheel. As I mentioned at the start of the show, you can get it for free at thecoachesjourney.com. It's my attempt to boil everything I've learned from my years supporting coaching and interviewing coaches about their businesses, including everything that I learned in those first 2 years that I mentioned in this episode, into one simple model containing the fundamentals of any sustainable coaching business. They're the only things you have to do to have a sustainable coaching business, and they're the things that if you don't do them, you can't have a sustainable coaching business. Get it for free at thecoachesjourney.com. You'll hear lots of the things in this episode echoed in there, and you'll see even more clearly, I think, how it all fits together. Thanks for getting all the way to the end of the episode. I'm imagining you think that the work we're doing is important and valuable. We think so too. So I also want to tell you about a way to support the Coach's Journey and get coaching from me and be part of an amazing group of coaches. That is, join the Coach's Journey community. It's my flexible, affordable group coaching program for coaches. You pay between $20 and £100 a month, get access to a certain number of group coaching calls every year, plus some one-to-one time with me if you're a full member, and various other benefits too. And of course, you get the chance to be connected to other amazing coaches on their own journeys too. Join the community at thecoachesjourney.com/community. You can also become a supporter of the podcast. If you want to give financial support to us, but the community isn't right now, find out more about that in the show notes, wherever you're listening. And if neither of those is right for you right now, please click subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to this podcast. That really makes a difference to us being able to continue to keep this show free. Thanks so much to everybody who has been a supporter of the Coach's Journey or a member of the Coach's Journey community over the years. It means so much to me, and you really have helped this podcast keep going. It wouldn't be here without if it couldn't be a manageable, sustainable part of my business, and it's that in a big way because of the people that have believed in my work and put their money where that belief is. So thanks to all of you, but in particular, thanks to Alex O'Neill, Alex Whitten, Alan Bedding, David Norris, Jessica Jem, Linda Ransom, Lucy Brown, Michael Trugman, and Oscar Gomez for your ongoing support. Thank you, too, for listening, and we hope to have you back with us on the Coach's Journey podcast sometime soon.